Did you know that Chuck E. Cheese was created by the founder of Atari? And that the story behind this pizza chain with arcade games involves terrifying animatronics, bankruptcy, mafia connections, and even a conspiracy theory about recycled pizza? Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. And if you love crazy business stories like this, smash that like button and subscribe because we've got so much more coming your way. Chuck E. Cheese. For many, this name brings back childhood memories of birthday parties, mediocre pizza, game tokens, and a giant animatronic mouse that was, at the very least, disturbing. But few people know that behind this iconic brand lies an epic story of innovation, unbridled ambition, corporate warfare, and plot twists worthy of a Hollywood movie. The story begins in the 1970s, when one of the greatest visionaries in the gaming industry decided to create something nobody had done before: a restaurant that would also be an electronic amusement park. What he didn't imagine was that his creation would become a cultural phenomenon, and also a financial nightmare that would haunt the industry for decades. Nolan Bushnell wasn't your average entrepreneur. In 1972, he founded Atari and literally created the video game industry with the launch of Pong. That little game with 2 paddles and a bouncing ball generated millions of dollars and made Bushnell a legend in Silicon Valley. But Bushnell had an even bigger vision. He wanted to create a place where entire families could have fun eating and playing together, a revolutionary concept for the time, when restaurants were just restaurants and arcades were just arcades. The problem was that Bushnell noticed something crucial. Kids loved video games, but parents had the money. He needed a concept that would keep children entertained while parents relaxed, ate, and most importantly, spent money. The solution? Combine food, entertainment, and animatronic mascots in one place. It was genius, but also incredibly risky. Nobody had tried anything like it before. Bushnell was inspired by several places. He'd visited Disneyland and been impressed by the immersive experiences and animatronics. He'd also seen the success of arcades, but noticed they were mostly filled with teenagers and young adults, not families. What if he could create a Disney for the common man? A place with shows, characters, and entertainment, but affordable for working-class families. A place where you didn't need a full day and hundreds of dollars, just an hour or two and enough for pizza and tokens. But why a rat? The real story is almost accidental and has become part of the legend. Bushnell originally wanted a coyote as the mascot, something cool, Southwestern, American. But when he ordered the animatronic costume from a manufacturer, there was a miscommunication in the order. When the package arrived, instead of a coyote, he got a rat. Rather than sending it back and wasting time and money, he embraced the idea and named the character Rick Rat. But Rick didn't sound right, so he changed it to Chuck and added the E in the middle, standing for entertainment. Thus, Chuck E. Cheese was born. There's another version of the story where Bushnell claims he always intended it to be a rat, inspired by the story of an orphaned mouse he saw in a documentary. Whatever the truth, the rat became iconic. In 1977, the first Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater opened its doors in San Jose, California. The concept was simple but brilliant. Affordable pizza, dozens of arcade games, and a live show starring singing animatronics. It was like Disney had merged with a pizzeria and an arcade. Kids went absolutely crazy. The original show featured Chuck E. Cheese as the star, surrounded by other characters. Jasper T. Jowls, a country-singing dog. Mr. Munch, a purple monster who loved pizza. Pasquale, the Italian chef. And Helen Henny, a Broadway-style chicken. They performed on a stage with elaborate sets, curtains, and lighting. The animatronics were state-of-the-art for the time. They could move their mouths, eyes, and bodies in sync with pre-recorded songs. For kids in the late 70s, this was mind-blowing technology. The success was immediate and overwhelming. Lines formed outside. Birthday parties were booked months in advance, and Bushnell saw his concept take off like a rocket. Parents loved it because it kept their kids occupied for hours. Kids loved it because it was sensory overload in the best way possible. Lights, sounds, prizes, pizza, and a show. Within just a few years, he began expanding aggressively, opening franchises across the country. The future looked bright, and Chuck E. Cheese was becoming a household name throughout America. But like many stories of meteoric success, problems were forming in the shadows. Bushnell was about to learn a brutal lesson about expanding too fast and dealing with ruthless competition. And the person who would teach him that lesson was someone he trusted, someone inside his own company. Chuck E. Cheese's success didn't go unnoticed, and Bushnell's biggest problem would come from within his own house. Robert Brock was a franchisee and partner who had been brought in to help with the company's expansion. He was a seasoned restaurant operator who understood the business side better than the creative Bushnell. Brock studied every detail of the business model, spending months learning the ins and outs. He learned about the suppliers' operational costs, the appeal of animatronics, the profit margins on tokens versus pizza, everything. In 1980, Brock had an idea that would change everything. Why work for Bushnell when he could create his own version? It was a betrayal that would spark one of the strangest corporate wars in American business history. He left Pizza Time Theater and founded Showbiz Pizza Place, a concept almost identical to Chuck E. Cheese, but with a different band of animatronics called the Rock-a-Fire Explosion. It was a shameless copy but perfectly legal. Brock had been careful not to violate any patents or trademarks. The Rock-a-Fire Explosion was actually technologically superior to Chuck E. Cheese's band. Created by inventor Aaron Fechter, these animatronics were more sophisticated, with better movements and more expressive faces. The band included Billy Bob Broccoli, a bear, Mitzi Mozzarella, a mouse cheerleader, Fats Geronimo, a gorilla, Beach Bear, a laid-back surfer bear, and others. They were impressive, and kids loved them just as much as Chuck E. Cheese. War was declared. Showbiz and Chuck E. Cheese began expanding frantically, each trying to dominate the entertainment family market. Small towns suddenly had 2 pizza places with creepy animatronics competing door to door. It became personal between Bushnell and Brock. They publicly trash-talked each other in interviews. Bushnell called Showbiz a cheap knockoff. Brock said Pizza Time Theater was mismanaged and inefficient. The rivalry was intense and bitter. Bushnell, overconfident in his original concept, made fatal mistakes. He expanded way too fast, opening dozens of units without adequate support structure. Many locations were poorly managed. Operational costs were sky high. Keeping animatronics functioning is expensive. Those robots broke down constantly and required specialized technicians, and quality began to plummet. Franchisees complained about lack of support. Equipment broke down. The pizza got worse. Meanwhile, Showbiz grew in a more controlled and profitable manner, with better management systems in place. Financial pressures mounted. Bushnell had also sold Atari to Warner Communications in 1976 for $28 million, and there were non-compete clauses that limited what he could do. He was stretched thin, trying to manage Pizza Time Theater while also starting other ventures. The company took on massive debt to fuel expansion. By 1982, there were over 200 Pizza Time Theater locations, but many were losing money. In 1983, the inevitable happened. Pizza Time Theater filed for bankruptcy. It was the largest restaurant bankruptcy in United States history at that time. The empire Bushnell had built crumbled in a matter of years. The company had over $50 million in debt. Hundreds of locations closed. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. And to make matters worse, guess who bought the bankrupt company's assets? None other than Robert Brock and Showbiz Pizza. It was the ultimate humiliation. The original creator of the concept had lost everything to his former partner. But the story was far from over. Brock now had both concepts in his hands, and he needed to decide what to do with this strange portfolio of rats and bears. What happened next was one of the weirdest chapters in retail history. After acquiring the bankrupt Pizza Time Theater in 1984, Robert Brock found himself in a unique situation. He owned the two largest chains of pizza restaurants with animatronics in the country. Showbiz Pizza and Chuck E. Cheese were now under the same corporate umbrella. But maintaining two competing brands didn't make economic sense. One of them would have to go. The decision wasn't easy. Showbiz had the more efficient and profitable operation, better management, lower costs, happier franchisees. Their animatronics were technically superior. Their food quality was more consistent. By every operational metric, Showbiz was the better company. But Chuck E. Cheese had something Showbiz didn't: superior brand recognition. Kids across the country knew that rat, even if they found him slightly terrifying. The name Chuck E. Cheese had penetrated American culture in a way Showbiz Pizza never quite did. Brock realized that the Chuck E. Cheese name was worth more than the entire Rockefeller explosion combined, so he made a decision that would haunt employees and customers for years. He would keep the Chuck E. Cheese brand but use Showbiz's superior operations. In 1990, one of the most bizarre processes in retail history began: the gradual conversion of all Showbiz units into Chuck E. Cheese locations. But this wasn't simply changing the signs outside. The animatronics needed to be replaced. This meant dismantling the Showbiz characters: Billy Bob the Bear, Mitzi the Cheerleader, Fats the Gorilla, and installing Chuck E. Cheese and his band in their place. The process was called concept unification, which is corporate speak for "we're going to destroy the characters you love and replace them with different characters." For employees and children who frequented the stores, it was disturbing. Imagine going to your favorite Showbiz and finding your favorite characters being literally dismembered and replaced by others. There was something almost sinister about it, like a corporate invasion manifesting through the destruction of beloved mascots. Some stores kept pieces of the old shows, creating strange hybrids that were even more unsettling. A Showbiz bear head on a Chuck E. Cheese body, or mixed bands that made no narrative sense. The conversion process was expensive and time-consuming. Each location cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to convert. The animatronics had to be carefully removed. Some ended up in storage, others were sold or destroyed. New Chuck E. Cheese stages had to be installed. Signage, decorations, and branding all had to change. The process took years to complete, dragging through the early and mid-1990s. Some loyal Showbiz fans were heartbroken. There are still online communities today mourning the loss of the Rockefeller explosion. Aaron Fechter, the creator of those animatronics, bought back some of the characters and continues to maintain and program them in his workshop in Florida. You can find YouTube videos of him putting on shows with the original Rockefeller characters, performing modern songs with animatronics from the 1980s. It's both impressive and deeply strange, but eventually the Showbiz Pizza brand disappeared completely. Chuck E. Cheese had won the war, even after losing the initial battle. Now under new management but with the original name, the company began to stabilize and grow again throughout the 1990s. The concept remained popular and new generations of kids made memories with that animatronic rat and his friends. However, the animatronics themselves were becoming a problem. As technology advanced and became more sophisticated, those jerky robots started looking increasingly dated and creepy. Their movements became more unsettling as they aged and broke down. Eyes would get stuck, jaws would freeze mid-song, the costumes became worn and dirty. And then something happened that would cement Chuck E. Cheese's animatronics as objects of horror in popular culture. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Did you ever go to Chuck E. Cheese as a kid? And if you did those animatronics creep you out? Because I've got to be honest, I was terrified of them. There was something about those dead eyes and mechanical movements that hit different, you know? Drop a comment and let me know. Team animatronics were cool, or Team animatronics were nightmare fuel? I'm genuinely curious if it was just me or if this was a universal childhood experience. Okay, so let's talk about how Chuck E. Cheese became associated with horror. In 2014, an indie horror game called Five Nights at Freddy's became a viral phenomenon. The premise? You're a night security guard at an abandoned pizza restaurant with animatronics that come to life at night and try to kill you. The setting was obviously inspired by places like Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz Pizza, right down to the layout and the band of animal characters. The game tapped into something deep in the collective unconscious. Those animatronics were always creepy. Anyone who grew up in the 80s and 90s has memories of staring at those mechanical puppets, half-broken, with jerky movements, singing with distorted voices through failing speakers. Five Nights at Freddy's simply confirmed what everyone had always suspected deep down. There was something wrong with those things. They shouldn't exist. They occupy some uncanny valley between toy and creature that fundamentally disturbs the human brain. For Chuck E. Cheese, this was both an image disaster and, paradoxically, a strange kind of publicity. Suddenly, a new generation was talking about the brand, but associating it with horror and killer animatronics. YouTube videos speculating about the real story behind Chuck E. Cheese exploded in popularity, many mixing real facts with absurd conspiracy theories. Some claimed there had been murders at Chuck E. Cheese locations. There had been isolated incidents over the years, but nothing supernatural. Others claimed the animatronics were haunted or possessed. The most viral theory involved a shooting that occurred at a Chuck E. Cheese in Aurora, Colorado in 1993, where a former employee killed 4 people and injured 1. It was a real tragedy, but conspiracy theorists latched onto it, claiming the spirits of the victims haunted the animatronics at that location. There was zero evidence for this, but it became part of the dark lore surrounding the brand. The modernization effort had mixed results. For younger children, the new Chuck E. Cheese was more palatable and less likely to cause nightmares. But the brand had lost part of its unique identity in the process. Without the animatronics, it was just another pizza place with games. The magic, creepy as it was, had diminished. What made Chuck E. Cheese special was that weird, uncanny experience. Take that away, and it's just a noisier version of any other family restaurant. And then came another blow that would threaten the entire business model. This one didn't involve animatronics or horror games. This one involved pizza. Specifically, accusations about what the company was doing with that pizza. In February 2019, YouTuber Shane Dawson posted a video that would get over 20 million views and create a PR nightmare for Chuck E. Cheese. He raised a bizarre theory. Chuck E. Cheese was recycling uneaten pizzas, taking leftover slices from different pizzas and reassembling them into new pizzas to serve to customers. The evidence? The slices never lined up perfectly, creating an irregular pattern. Different slices appeared to be slightly different sizes and colors. It looked suspicious. The video went absolutely viral. Thousands of people went to Chuck E. Cheese locations with the specific purpose of examining their pizzas and filming them. Many confirmed that yes, the slices did look weird and misaligned. TikTok and Twitter exploded with theories. Was Chuck E. Cheese really serving Frankenstein pizzas made from other people's leftovers? It was disgusting, unsanitary, and probably illegal. The internet was convinced they'd uncovered a major scandal. Chuck E. Cheese had to issue official statements categorically denying the practice. They explained that the irregularity of the slices was because their pizzas were made by hand and not cut by precision machines. Each pizza was unique. Different cooking times and oven positions caused slight variations in size and color. The dough would sometimes shift or expand unevenly in the oven, causing the slices to not match up perfectly after cutting. It was a completely innocent explanation, but the damage was done. The theory was absurd when you thought about it logically. The amount of coordination, effort, and food safety violations required to actually implement a pizza recycling scheme would be enormous. You'd need to train all employees in the conspiracy, risk constant health code violations, deal with different toppings and temperatures. It made no economic or practical sense. But logic doesn't matter on the internet. Recycled pizza became synonymous with Chuck E. Cheese. Memes flooded social media. Comedians made jokes about it. The brand's reputation took another hit. The timing couldn't have been worse. The company was already facing serious financial difficulties. The business model, which depended on families bringing children for in-person parties and playing at physical arcades, was being destroyed by multiple forces. Home video game consoles like PlayStation and Xbox had become incredibly sophisticated. Why go to an arcade when you had better games at home? Mobile gaming was exploding. Kids were getting smartphones younger and younger, providing entertainment anywhere, anytime. The appeal of arcade tokens and tickets was diminishing. Additionally, the rise of alternative entertainment options was hurting the business. Trampoline parks, indoor climbing facilities, laser tag arenas, escape rooms, and other modern entertainment venues were competing for the same family entertainment dollars. Chuck E. Cheese's facilities, many of which hadn't been significantly updated since the 90s, felt dated and worn. The carpets were gross. The games were old. The pizza was never that good to begin with. Parents who had nostalgic memories of the place as kids were bringing their own children and realizing it wasn't as magical as they remembered. The company accumulated massive debt trying to renovate locations and stay relevant. They invested in new games, remodeling stores, and marketing campaigns. But revenues were declining. The core concept, getting families to drive to a specific location and spend hours there, was becoming increasingly difficult in the digital age. By 2019, CEC Entertainment, the parent company, had nearly $1 billion in debt and was struggling to make payments. Then came 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic. For a company that depended completely on large gatherings of children in enclosed spaces, it was absolutely devastating. Literally overnight, their entire business model became impossible. You couldn't have birthday parties. You couldn't have crowds of kids touching the same game machines. Many locations closed temporarily, but with no revenue coming in and massive fixed costs, the financial situation became catastrophic. In June 2020, CEC Entertainment filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, citing debts of nearly $2 billion. It was history repeating itself. Once again, Chuck E. Cheese was on the brink of collapse. The company that had survived animatronic wars, competition, modernization, and conspiracy theories couldn't survive a global pandemic. During the pandemic, with locations closed and revenue completely stopped, Chuck E. Cheese tried desperate measures to survive. They pivoted hard to delivery and takeout, which made sense on paper. People still needed to eat, and pizza delivery was booming during lockdowns. But there was a problem. Nobody wanted to order pizza from Chuck E. Cheese. The brand's reputation for mediocre pizza was well established. People associated it with children's entertainment, not quality food. So the company did something sneaky. They launched a ghost kitchen brand called Pasquale's Pizza and Wings on delivery apps like DoorDash, Grubhub, and Uber Eats. Ghost kitchens are restaurants that exist only for delivery. No physical storefront, no dine-in. Except Pasquale's wasn't really a new restaurant. It was just Chuck E. Cheese's kitchen operating under a different name. The exact same pizzas, made in the exact same kitchens by the exact same staff, but branded as a new Italian restaurant. The name Pasquale's came from Pasquale P. Pie Plate, the chef character in Chuck E. Cheese's animatronic band. But most customers ordering from delivery apps had no idea about this connection. The Pasquale's menu looked more upscale, with better photography and descriptions that made the pizza sound gourmet. Prices were similar, or sometimes even higher than Chuck E. Cheese's normal prices. For a while, it worked. People ordered from Pasquale's thinking they were supporting a new local restaurant during tough times. Some reviews were positive. The pizza was surprisingly good. It was literally the same pizza, but expectations affect perception. But then customers started noticing something weird. Their Pasquale's orders were coming from Chuck E. Cheese locations. The bags had Chuck E. Cheese branding. Delivery drivers were picking up from obvious Chuck E. Cheese buildings. When the truth came out, people felt deceived. Food bloggers and journalists covered the story. Social media erupted with accusations of dishonesty. During a time when people were specifically trying to support small businesses and local restaurants during the pandemic, discovering that Pasquale's was actually a corporate chain felt like a betrayal. Chuck E. Cheese defended the practice, saying it was simply a different menu concept, but the PR damage was significant. Other desperate measures followed. Some locations experimented with adding alcohol to their menu to appeal to adult customers: craft beer, wine, even cocktails. The pitch was that nostalgic millennials would come hang out at their childhood spot, now with booze. Some locations added new attractions like trampolines, climbing walls, and VR experiences to compete with modern entertainment venues. They offered party packages for adults. Yes, you could have your birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese as a 30-year-old with your friends, drinking beer and playing arcade games ironically. The company negotiated with landlords, reduced staff, closed unprofitable locations, and restructured operations. They emerged from bankruptcy in December 2020 after securing $650 million in financing, but it came at a cost. The company had closed over 30 locations permanently. Thousands of employees had been laid off. The debt was restructured, but still enormous. The future was uncertain. As lockdowns eased and locations reopened, attendance was slow to recover. Many parents were still cautious about taking children to crowded indoor spaces. Birthday parties were smaller and less frequent. The financial wounds were deep, and the company was operating in survival mode, not growth mode. The question everyone was asking: could Chuck E. Cheese survive in the post-pandemic world? Today, Chuck E. Cheese continues to operate, but it's a shadow of the empire it once was. The company keeps trying to reinvent itself. Fewer animatronics, more technology, virtual reality experiences, trampolines in some locations, and even talks of NFTs and metaverse experiences, because apparently every struggling company thinks crypto will save them. But the fundamental question remains: is there still a place for this type of business in the 21st century? The numbers tell a concerning story. From a peak of over 600 locations in the early 2000s, Chuck E. Cheese has contracted to around 470 locations as of 2024. Revenue has been declining year over year. The company faces competition not just from other entertainment venues but from the biggest competitor of all: screens at home. Why would parents take kids to Chuck E. Cheese when those same kids are perfectly content playing Fortnite, watching YouTube, or scrolling TikTok from the couch? But Chuck E. Cheese's legacy is more complex than just business metrics. For an entire generation, it represents irreplaceable childhood memories: the smell of mediocre pizza, the deafening noise of the arcades, the excitement of collecting tickets to trade for cheap prizes, and yes, even those disturbing animatronics. It was where millions of children celebrated birthdays and created memories that lasted a lifetime. For many people, especially those who grew up in the 80s and 90s, Chuck E. Cheese is deeply embedded in their nostalgia. There's also a strange cultural legacy. Chuck E. Cheese has appeared in countless TV shows, movies, and YouTube videos. It's been parodied, referenced, and analyzed. The animatronics became horror icons thanks to Five Nights at Freddy's. The pizza conspiracy became an internet phenomenon. Chuck E. Cheese exists in American pop culture in a way few other restaurant chains do. Everyone has an opinion about it, usually strong opinions. They either loved it or were traumatized by it, no in between. The brand also represents a type of entertainment that may be headed toward extinction. In an era where children have smartphones by age 8, where virtual birthday parties became normal during the pandemic, and where personalized algorithmic experiences dominate over mass entertainment, the concept of taking 30 kids to a loud pizzeria with a robotic rat seems almost quaint. It's analog in a digital world, collective in an individualized age, physical in a virtual era. Yet there's something undeniably special about Nolan Bushnell's original vision. Creating a place where families could come together, disconnect, ironically through arcade games, and simply have fun together in the same physical space. In increasingly fragmented and digital times, maybe this type of collective physical experience is more valuable than ever. Maybe what kids need isn't more screen time and isolation, but more chaotic, overstimulating, weird, slightly scary experiences where they make real memories with real people. Some entrepreneurs and investors believe in this thesis. There's been renewed interest in experiential entertainment, places that offer experiences you can't replicate at home. Some see potential in revitalizing Chuck E. Cheese by leaning into nostalgia marketing for millennials who now have their own kids, upgrading technology while keeping the weird charm, or even creating Chuck E. Cheese-themed content for streaming platforms. Others think the brand is finished, a relic that should be allowed to die with dignity. The animatronics are gone from most locations. The games are increasingly just redemption games, those carnival-style games where you win tickets. The pizza is still mediocre. What's the point? Why not just let it fade away like so many other 20th century brands that couldn't adapt to the 21st? Will Chuck E. Cheese survive the next decade? It's genuinely hard to say. The company is privately held now, so there's less public information about its finances and strategy. Some locations are doing well, especially in suburban areas with young families. Others struggle with declining attendance and revenues. The brand is in a state of limbo, not quite dead, but not exactly thriving either. But here's what we know for certain. That rat, creepy, iconic, beloved, and hated in equal measure, has already secured its place in American cultural history. Chuck E. Cheese isn't just a pizza chain. It's a time capsule of childhood for millions of people, complete with all its sounds, smells, joys, and yes, animatronic nightmares included. It represents a specific era of American family entertainment, for better or worse. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the legacy isn't about whether the company survives another 50 years, but about the memories already created, the weird cultural phenomenon it became, and the fact that an entrepreneur once looked at a rat animatronic that arrived by mistake and said, "Yeah, let's build an empire around this thing." That's American capitalism at its strangest and most beautiful. So what about you? Do you have any Chuck E. Cheese memories? Were you Team Animatronic or Team Terrified? And do you think places like this can survive, or are they destined to become extinct like the dinosaurs they sometimes put on their stages? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of America's weirdest business stories, make sure you're subscribed because we've got so many more stories like this coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.